So I had a guest lined up for this podcast, number 2, and week of they bailed. So I'll take it upon myself. This is something that I knew would happen. I knew I'd have a solo podcast to give myself the same treatment I give my guests. Because not that I grill, I've had 2 guests, 1 episode. Not that I grill my guests or anything, but I do kind of I want to get into some important territory, some significant territory. I have a little whiskey with me because I'm not a talker. I don't really talk, and I know I just fired up this podcast, so I will be doing a lot of talking, but, it's like almost the way I have it set up. I don't even want to do much talking. I just want to do listening. That's like what I do. And so the point, I suppose, of the solo podcast, of the premature solo podcast, I was hoping this would be like 10 or 20, not number 2, but we get it on number 2. So my name is Casye, and I went through a lot of potential names and landed on best case scenario because I just liked it, I tend to be one of those people that see the good in situations, and not to totally rip off Jocko, but I mean, come on, we got to have our role models. Somebody's got to be my role model, and that's kind of where I learned it. And so best case scenario kind of reflects that as even a sarcastic thing, a sarcastic way. Like you can, however it shakes out, it's the best case scenario. I don't have a guest this week. Best case scenario possible. That's just how you got to look at it. That's how I choose to look at it rather than kind of the woe is me. Even though I did have maybe a day where I wasn't very happy that I had to scramble for a guest. And then the couple of guests that I did ask to be on said not this week or straight up not interested. Looking at you, T. Burrows. I'm pretty much going to give myself the interview. This will be explaining a little bit about who I am, why I am the way I am, where you might know me from, what to expect in future podcasts, because I feel like just throwing out the first one the way I did, it was very short notice. It was spur of the moment, so I just wanted to hit record and see what happened. I do have a plan for the structure of this podcast and how I want it to go. If you're authentic with yourself, I think people recognize that. And I think the only thing truly with any type of media output or artistic output, I just want to be authentic. And because, everybody can do the charades, but like how long can you keep the charades up? Because eventually it's going to break through. So I want to be, completely transparent or honest or, all the above. It's a good feeling being trusted. I feel like I am trustworthy, and I want that to be a reflection of the show. And not that I'm out to get anybody, but I want to provide a safe space that if somebody wants to either share their story or, eventually I'm sure there'll be silly podcasts, but the next few guests that I have lined up, I am actually like genuinely excited to ask them questions and to learn about them. These are people that I've known for years. They're local people. I'm not doing any traveling right now. It's a mobile podcast, but it's not that mobile. So these are just people that I know, school, work, and that's basically, I guess, how you meet people. They're people that I've been like curious about. So to be able to sit them down and, people say yes to a podcast, but they don't often say yes to like, can I just come over and talk to you for an hour because I'm curious? So maybe this podcast is a little bit of an excuse for me to steal an hour of somebody's time and really get to know them on a deeper level and understand why they are the way they are, because I do have a degree in psychology. We'll get to that later. But more than the degree, like what stuck with me was the mindset, the everyday use of it. It's like I used to put that on my resume, which, don't laugh at me, I have a terrible resume. We'll get to that later too. I used to say I have a psychology degree and I use it every day. Or maybe that was my dating profiles. I don't really know. I've deleted all those since, so don't look for them. But it was something along those lines of some of the things I learned through the few, years of classes that I had. I'm no psychology expert, unfortunately. I would love to be. I think that would be cool. I didn't want to go to more school. I didn't pay attention in school to start with, but psychology was one thing that kind of like grabbed the attention, and I couldn't look away. I just loved it. So some of that definitely is rooted in my psychology thinking, as far as like getting to know people, wanting to know people. And I was thinking about it the other day. It's weird. I just really, really, really love people. I really love people. Hearing about their stories. That's Damien from podcast 1 last week. I so loved editing that podcast because I got to re-listen. Because when you're doing a podcast, I'm just wanting things to go smoothly, and sometimes I'm elsewhere just trying to, and especially the first episode, I'm checking cameras, I'm checking audio, all that. Which, speaking of, I got a new microphone, so hopefully audio is better. I know audio was the main issue I heard from the first podcast. So new microphones should be a lot better. I know how to run this little thing, the Zoom PodTrack P4. I know how to run that a little bit better now. I did a little research on it. Now I feel like I kind of have it dialed in quite a bit better. That's kind of the gist of the podcast. I want to use it as an avenue to meet new people in the future, in the present, to understand my friends better. And I guess beyond that is to introduce these people who I find fascinating for some reason. I have a guest list of probably, 20 people. And they're 20 people that I am just curious about. There's just a natural curiosity of either who they are or what they do. The wind is blowing. I hope you don't hear it, but there's nothing I can do. I'm trying. I'm sorry. But I have a whole list of just people that I just want to know more about. And so that's where I'm going to start with it. I have such a wide spectrum of, I guess it's not so much of interest, it's respect of other people's interests. Like, I geek out on certain things, and I know other people geek out on certain things. And the worst thing in the world is when somebody shames you for something you geek out about. And no doubt we've all been there. We've all been shamed for something we like, Star Wars or Barbie dolls, or, it just goes on. Anything, cars, the non-car guy giving shit to the car guy, like, or whichever, vice versa. It's the worst thing. And it's like, why, for that particular person, why are they so interested in Legos? Why is Legos their thing? Like, is it a childhood thing? Is it something they learned about in adulthood? Is it something recent? I've recently been obsessed with the piano. I want to learn so bad. I need a tutor, because teaching yourself is slow, and I feel like I'm doing it wrong, and this is all besides the point. So anyway, hopefully this podcast does lead me to meeting people. But the point of this podcast, episode number 2, is to introduce me. I'm just not really a talker. I'm a listener. And that's why I feel personally that I'm going to make for a good podcast host. I'm putting in real effort into becoming a better interviewer. That's one of my goals for this year, for this podcast. I want to be a better interviewer. I want to be able to talk to anybody. I want to be able to fish information out of anybody, through a safe space, through a supportive space where I say, I'm not going to judge you. I just want to know. But also, like, it's very important to use the right words for the statement or the question you want to know the answer to. If you don't use the right words, how can you expect to get the correct answer? So I'm just very particular. I try to be very particular about word usage, about the proper word in the proper spot in the sentence. And so I want to integrate all that into my interviewing skills, which I don't have any. I've done a few podcasts with my brother, but I've never been an interviewer. And I want to challenge myself to become a better interviewer. But in fairness, I need to go into my backstory and explain from my point of view why I am the way I am. Let the audience have a fair shot at me as well as the guest I bring on, because, as I said, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want to shame anybody, but I'm okay with going to uncomfortable places with people. So I don't want to seem like I'm doing it to everybody else, but I'm, staying quiet about my situation. It's fine. So here we are. Today I woke up and I knew today was the day for the podcast. And usually I'm not nervous because it takes two to tango, and it's easier to tango with two rather than tango with one. So, it's like a mix of, I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm going to forget to say something that's like a piece of my personality that I want to share, and all of the above. So, we're just going to go. I'm just going to riff pretty much. I have a few notes, but we're just going to go. It's not going to be perfect. I know it's not going to be perfect. That kind of gets me to where we are now. I kind of explained a little bit why I named it best case scenario. I had a few other ones in mind. I'm not going to say them. But I had a few others in mind. I just really liked best case scenario. It just fit better than the other ones. So I went to Google, and I believe it's from Wikipedia, or I don't know. It's one of those. I'm giving credit to Google. Usually Google has the definition, but I think for the phrase best case scenario, Google didn't know what to do. So best case scenario, any situation or conclusion which could not be any better, the best possible outcome. That is the definition of best case scenario from a website that I don't remember where I got it from, but I love that. Best case scenario, any situation or conclusion which could not be any better. It's the best. It's the best possible outcome. There's no other outcome better. So maybe with this podcast, with YouTube in particular, that's where all this is going. I'm praying, I'm hoping for the best case scenario, because to me, the best case scenario is pretty good. By the formal definition, the best possible outcome. There's no way that I can fathom the best possible outcome, and it gets me excited. It gets me to buy a better microphone, to use whatever BS phone cameras I have, because it's the best I got, and this is what I want to do. And then you build goals around it. And the thing I love about goals is once you have a goal, you can ask yourself in any situation, if any variable crosses your path, and you ask yourself, does this get me closer to my goal? And it will make it so black and white, so clear, whether this goal is important to you or not. Because if you say, no, that does not get me closer to my goal, but I'm still eating the ice cream or whatever it is, whatever your goal is, then obviously you don't really care much about that goal. But if you set a goal that you really, really want to achieve, and something comes across your path and you ask yourself, does this help me achieve my goal? And well, if you say yes, obviously you better do the thing or whatever. But if you say no and you walk away from it, it reinforces your will, the command over yourself that this is not important. It'll give me momentary pleasure or momentary distraction or whatever, but it's not important enough that if it takes away from my goal, from the pursuit of my goal, if it gets in the way, if it makes me sidestep, then I don't want it. I want no part of it. My goal is so much more important than that. And so setting goals around the podcast, hitting record. You know how hard it is to hit record? Some people know. And that's metaphorical, obviously. Hitting record on, it's the go button. Hit the go button. What's your goal? Okay, whatever. You want to do that. Okay, great. What's the first step? If you never take the first step, you're never getting to step 2. If you don't do episode 1, you're not getting to episode 2. So there is a metaphorical power in hitting record, hitting the go button, and we're here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. All right, I'll stop beating around the bush. So, oh boy. The earliest thing I can remember from my childhood, probably a trip to SeaWorld with my parents. I remember my dad's shoes. I'm not really sure why. He still has them. But I just remember, I guess I liked them. I liked the shoes. And I was like 3 or 4. I don't know. My childhood was good. No doubt about it. There were things that weren't perfect, but it was good. And, especially growing up and seeing what other people came from, even close friends, that went to the same school, is unbelievable what they went through versus what I went through. It's like not even, it's crazy. It's crazy. I remember going to church with my mom. I remember my first friends. I guess they'd be my first friends. It's like Joseph and Colby. I'm sure they'll be on the podcast someday. They were like my mom's friends' children who was close to the same age, so it worked out. But that's like who I remember my first friends being. And it's funny, like as a kid, I grew up in the country. I don't know how many acres, plenty. And we had like a pasture and like woods and a couple ponds. Like it was kind of the whole ordeal. But it was about a 25-minute drive on back roads, like before you got into town. So my brother and I had one brother, older brother. We wouldn't really get cabin fever because there was so much to do. We had 4-wheelers and animals and, like I said, ponds and cameras, and we stayed busy or whatever. We had plenty to do on any given day. But it's funny because then we get like these in-town friends, and all we want to do is go into town because they're neighbors with my other best friend, and then my other best friend lives like 2 streets down, and we can all walk or ride our bikes and hang out together. But most of my friends wanted to come out to my parents' house when I was a kid because there was land, there was 4-wheelers, we could just kind of explore and travel, and we had a little campsite. We'd light a fire. This was back late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there. When we're kids, that's kind of where I'm getting. We were kids, and we were given free reign. It's a different time, obviously. Everybody says that about everything these days. Oh, it's a different time when I was a kid. Like, yeah, well, things change. So, I don't know. I certainly have a pity or we had so much fun as kids. So much free reign. The rule was like be home at dark or whatever. The street light turns on, that means come home. Like that was our rules. And at my parents' house, there really wasn't one. Like, you guys camping out tonight? All right, whatever. Come get dinner and enjoy your night. Like it's just like there wasn't rules. Just survive. I had a great childhood. My relationship with my parents is a different story, I guess. It's not a bad story. And just, it's one of those, like, I would say no to being on this podcast, knowing the questions I want to ask people because I don't want to answer them. But that's kind of the point of this one. So, middle school, high school, really all through childhood, my dad was a doctor and he worked. And it's funny because I've met other doctors' children, well, whatever, offspring. I worked with one at a welding place, and it was crazy. I asked him something like, did you want to be a doctor when you were a kid? And he looked at me with like almost terrified eyes, like, absolutely not even a little bit, completely opposite direction. That life his dad or whatever showed him that life is a rough life. So if you're probably most medical staff children, maybe you can relate to this, but he just wasn't around all that often. He was at work. When he was off work, he had a farm to run, so he was running the farm. And he just wasn't around a whole lot as a kid, and I don't blame him for that. Like, I didn't go without. Remember the four-wheelers I talked about? Yeah, I didn't buy those, so I didn't go without. We had food on the table, that whole thing. But it's like it's kind of like the father's sacrifice. There's a sacrifice that has to be made from everybody, and the father's sacrifice is being away from the family to support the family. And so it sucks. Like, he did what he wanted to on the farm. His dreams kind of over there. But I always felt like, we kind of got left by the wayside. We didn't get to have the relationship that I would have preferred to have with a dad. And some of the other dads that I saw, my friends' dads or whatever, is just like, I couldn't comprehend the relationship with son, because mine was like absent. I didn't have there wasn't a relationship, and there's so much that happened, as a kid, times with my dad, or, times my dad had a brother as well. So like my uncle, a lot of times with my dad and my uncle, and a lot of times with my brother and those two. And oftentimes I would go, like, say we went hunting or something. It's like I would go with my uncle because my brother wanted to go with my dad. And so then it like kind of severed that relationship even more, because now I'm not even hunting with my dad. I'm hunting with my uncle, which is great. I love my uncle so much. That's besides the point. That's nothing against him. He was awesome. He still is. We just had his birthday the other day. I mean, I love that guy so much. But the point is that it kind of took away time with my own dad that, I just didn't get to have. So there was plenty of times that, we did hang out. He wasn't completely gone. As a kid, it's like, you don't know what's going on. And I definitely didn't. People were like, oh, your dad, doctor, wow, he must make a lot of money. It's like, never, I don't know. We grew up pretty modest, we had land, we had four-wheelers and stuff, but like, nothing special in the house. My brother and I shared a room all the way through high school. It was not fancy living. We didn't see it besides, like peripherally. I came from some money, but it just doesn't feel like it. Like, I feel like I've been poor my whole life, which contradicts everything I kind of just said. But it's one of those things that, and my brother and I have talked about it. It's like, nobody understands unless you were under that roof. And so I am sorry if you grew up a single child, because to have somebody else that you can kind of look at and be like, did you kind of pick that up too? Is that what you were thinking on this one? And to kind of be verified, either, that was crazy, or no, I don't think so. And to get another take on a situation was and is absolutely huge. So it was great to have a brother growing up, and obviously being out there 25 minutes away from civilization. And, as a kid, you're not driving anywhere. To have somebody like that in your corner, hey, let's go find something to do. Like, oh man, it goes a long way. So that's mainly it with my dad. Now we aren't that close. I don't talk to him ever, hardly. We see each other when I go to the house or whatever, but we don't really talk. And I feel like most of that is a product of my childhood. I don't know who you are. It's like, when I went through tough times, that wasn't who I went to. I didn't go to my dad when other people's like, my dad's the first person I call. I just didn't have that. So that's kind of where that is. Now, the funny thing about my mom is that she's the exact opposite. She worked for the school. When I went to the school, she worked in the class that I was in, because one of the girls in my class had a para or whatever, essentially she was an interpreter. sign language interpreter for a girl in my class. So, on one hand, I had like next to no interaction with my dad. And on the other hand, I rode to school with my mom. She was in my classroom and hallways all day. I rode home with my mom. And that was pretty much like that middle school through high school, like 6th grade through 12th grade. So I got like these two extreme situations to where one parent is 24/7. I can't even have a high school experience by myself. I'm trying to make out with my girlfriend in the hallway, wondering, is my mom going to round the corner or something? And so it's weird. It's like the absence drove me away from my dad, and the extreme exposure drove me away from my mom. And high school was really good to me. It's like, this is going to be sad as shit, but it's like, I kind of understand when people say like, oh, you must have peaked in high school or whatever. It's like, I kind of get that. I had a really good high school. I was pretty well known. I was okay at sports. I was just big, which helps in most circumstances. High school was good to me. It was easy. It was like too good because it was easy for me. I had no problem interacting with people. I had no problem making friends. I had no problem standing up for the little guy. Like, I was known to be a pretty good guy in high school. I was, I couldn't pull all the girls, but, for the most part, it's like, and had I known what I know now, it's like, yeah, you put in effort, and you probably could have got whoever you wanted. Besides the point, I didn't know that back then. My girlfriends were all awesome. Like, high school, I really have no complaints. I could have done better in sports. It was just automatic A's. It was just like class. Like, just show up and you're going to get an A. That's how it was for me. That's how it was for sports. Like, just show up. I was big enough and strong enough. Yeah, you're probably going to start. I was smart enough. Yeah, you're probably going to get an A. So I just like breezed through it. It was no problem. High school was easy, besides having classes with my mom. That was frustrating. That made me want to get away. And the easiness of high school really made me land on my face for like the next 5 years after high school and beyond. I mean, I'm still working on things, trying to make up for mistakes that I made many, many years ago. But I went to college and thought it'd be easy. I remember I missed a class. It was like history or something, my first semester. I missed a class. And my dumbass emails the professor and says, like, oh, I didn't make it to class today. What did I miss? What notes do I need for today's class? Yeah, he didn't message back. But it was a small wake-up call to, this ain't high school. Like, you got to actually try. Unfortunately, I didn't learn that until I was out of college. College was a waste of time for me. And the only benefit, thank goodness, the only benefit was psychology classes. I loved psychology, and I was pre-med to begin with, took a class called Principles of Learning, and I loved it. I loved that class so much, and it started a whirlwind effect of, I need more psychology. I need to know more. I want to learn more. I want to be more of a psych person. I know it gets laughed at as a degree goes, but the information is like where I got off. Like, I don't know. I don't brag that I have a psychology degree, but I'm so, so, so thankful for the information from those classes, because it absolutely changed the chemistry of my brain to better understand myself, other people. And they'll tell you that. They're like, you're probably in here because you have somebody that you know that you want to diagnose. And for me, it was like, yeah, he's right here. I want to understand my brain and how it works and why it works the way it does. So I really enjoyed that. But college was a lot of drinking and a lot of partying and a lot of wasting time, not going to classes. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Nobody sat me down and said, you don't have to go to college. that was a conversation I didn't get to have. When I remember in high school, one of my teachers said, okay, raise your hand if you plan on not going to college. And a kid raised his hand. I mean, multiple people did, but one kid in particular. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, it made no sense to me that not going to college was an option. And I think more people knew that. And I think more people know that now, to where that's probably not the soapbox I need to stand up on and explain to everybody, you don't have to go. I think trades have made a big comeback, and other avenues of further schooling. But back then, it's just like I guess not all, but most of my family went to college, has a college degree, works a job correlated to whatever college thing they studied. And so it was just like never even not an option. It was never even not an option, when it definitely should have been. I would have looked, like in hindsight, I know it gets shit on a lot, I absolutely would have looked at the military. I walked by those guys when they came to school, my nose up in the air, like, you're going to get some poor sucker to sign up. And maybe they did get some poor sucker, but a lot of those military guys are better off than I am. So, as far as societal life goes, so there's so many metrics you can use on who's better off where and why and what, but societal structure, yeah, a lot of those guys got me beat, probably because they went to the military, got their ass kicked. They just learned lessons that I had to learn in real life that took me longer to learn, were harder to learn, and harder to implement, I guess, which is part of learning. But I wouldn't have just walked by with my nose in the air, is all I'm saying. Maybe I would have had a conversation. And trades too. I thought graduating high school, I thought money was going to show up early and often. And I was wrong. I devalued money from my childhood because there was the correlation of, look at my dad, and that's what he's doing for money. I want nothing to do with money. The only thing I remember my parents fighting about, they probably fought more than I care to admit, they fought about money. So I just completely devalued money. I said, I don't care. I don't want it in my life. I don't need it in my life. And that's all great, unless you spent money like I spent money, and especially going to college, and everything that living on your own comes with. It's like, yeah, you can devalue money if you live a certain way, but otherwise, inherently, if you're going to live in society, in America, money has to have some worth. And that makes me so sick. There's no opt-out button. I can't just say, nope, I don't want a job. I don't want a house. I don't want to pay bills. I don't want to go to the movies. I don't want to go to the arcade. I don't want to do any of the shit that you offer, that you say, you got to work your job, and then when you get off, you can go have fun. All the go have fun stuff, I want out. I don't care. I don't need it. I don't want it. You can't do that, unfortunately. I mean, I guess if you moved countries or something, you could probably work it out. But generally, society pushes for separation. So the kids kick them out at 18 so they can pay their own bills and, be in debt, be slaves for as long as we can make them slaves. It sucks. And maybe, some of you might be thinking this is conspiracy territory. It's the world that, a 30-year-old sees. I'm 30 now, so I have 20s under my belt. And the lessons I've learned is that society doesn't care about the individual, without a doubt, without any doubt in my mind. And that sucks. It doesn't suck. It sucks if you rely on society. If you rely on the grid and the system as a way of life. And I think if things go sour in 24, it's a lot of people might get an opportunity to see how resilient they actually are. Because so many people, I think, are so dependent on the grid, and that without it, it's they can't even conceive it. And it's like, well, what if something forces your hand? What if a global cataclysmic event forces your hand that you don't get what you have. You don't get your TV shows. You don't get this or that. It's like life goes on and you're going to be fine and you're going to make it. Like, yeah, millions and millions will die. So maybe you won't, maybe I won't, but for those that find balance, for those that find food and shelter and water, like, you're going to be fine. We lived that way for hundreds of thousands of years. You're going to be just fine. Animals still live that way. And if you give evolution any kind of credit, then yeah, we're animals. So anyway, that's kind of my high school. In college. So then my 20s, I was very frustrated. I was very, very frustrated. And like, the only reason that was good, the only reason why that was the best case scenario is that I'm not frustrated anymore. At least with the same aspects of life that I was frustrated with in my 20s, I don't feel those same frustrations. And when I say frustrated, I mean tormented. I was tormented in my 20s with the meaning of life, the significance of life, the purpose of life. I was asking just way too big of questions. And the thing about those big questions is the more answers you get, the more questions you're going to have. And it was kind of a learning curve of when I learned that. When I learned you're going to drive yourself crazy for the next year trying to answer this question. Once you find the answer to that question, there are bigger and deeper questions that will arise and come to you. And for how frustrated I was and angry, not so much at the world, I guess, but just why are things the way that they are? Why am I the way that I am? I had a bunch of why questions, and not like a why me, but like someone just explain it to me so I can understand it. And the better you understand something, the more you can manipulate it to your liking. But if you don't understand it, you're probably going to be scared of it, and you're probably going to not touch it. And all I wanted to know when I was in my 20s was like, what am I supposed to be doing? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? How do I live my days? I just didn't have any answers. And I partied. And I drank a lot of booze. That didn't benefit me, like, yeah, some mind expanding substances that truly mind expanding, like, I was thankful for them, for some of the questions that I had, to go into the influence of some of these substances and to kind of get an answer, or, at least it was heard. It's like, I heard, I heard something or whatever say, I hear you asking, I hear you asking the question. And sometimes that's enough just to be heard. Like, if you think you're doing it all by yourself, which I so felt like I was, is like, is nobody else struggling with life itself? Not bills, not finances, not relationships, but like existence. Nobody went there. Like, nobody where I was. I couldn't talk to this about anybody. I mean, maybe I could have, but I never brought it up. I never did. I just kept it in and suffered in silence. So that was most of my 20s. I didn't do anything. I took some trips. I went to Europe, but mainly it was just partying. It was just any excuse we had to get together with the friends, get some girls together, and throw back a few and just see how crazy we could get. Like, that was my 20s, and they are over now. And I ended my 20s with a bang. A bang in such a way that I have a hard time distinguishing. It's like my 20s have been completely severed from my 30s. Completely different. It's not just like a new decade. It's a whole different thing. And that's because right after my 29th birthday, days after, I think it was 4 days after, 4 days after my 19th birthday, I took a Greyhound bus to Wichita. I walked from Wichita, Kansas to Boulder, Colorado. It was a 40-day pilgrimage in pursuit of an ayahuasca ceremony. So, man, long story short, I applied for a job that I really wanted, and I didn't get it for some absurd reasons. Absurd. Not going to get into that. So I didn't get it, and I kind of blew a fuse. It was just one of those times where I was like, you know what? The party thing is fun. I still enjoy a good party, but to have my whole life revolve around it, it's not one of my priorities anymore, not one of my goals. I blew a fuse. And I started planning a trip. I asked myself, like, okay, what's something you've always wanted to do? Because here's your chance. Your damn near dream job just gave you the finger after a very promising possibility, completely thrown out the door. And it was just like, what have you always wanted to do? And for me, that was go to an ayahuasca ceremony, participate in an ayahuasca ceremony. Ayahuasca is a Peruvian vine that, when brewed into a tea or a beverage or a liquid, produces extreme. It's kind of different for everybody. For me, it was extreme bodily disasters. Take that for what you will. And extreme hallucinogenic effects. So hard to explain. There's documentaries out there. So if you want to know more about ayahuasca, there's it's not going to be for me. I can't explain it. I learned about it late high school, early college, 2010-ish area. And I was just obsessed ever since. I did a presentation over it. I think in speech class we had like a persuasive presentation, an informative presentation, whatever. Like these different types of presentation. I think my informative presentation was ayahuasca. And the looks that I got from my class where I told them there's a thing called the purge. And that's basically when your body purges through one end or the other or both. In my case, they asked, is this something you're going to do? I would love to. Love to fly down to Peru and drink this in a jungle in a hut. Because that's traditionally it was tribal. Tribes had it. And they kept it within the tribes. And extremely sacred, extremely ceremonious. This is not a recreational chemical. And then somehow or another, Westerners got it or whatever, U.S. found it. And then it became kind of a touristy thing to where if you wanted to try it, celebrities, Will Smith and God knows who else goes down and does it. Will Smith is probably not the example I should use, but so it's been around for a little while, but it's definitely like gaining traction. And now it's like, it's in the U.S. I don't know how, I guess I do know how. It's illegal chemically, but because you have to be a church, you have to be a, whatever, religious foundation or whatever, you can do it for a religious practice. That's how you get away with it in America. And so I used that opportunity of not getting my dream job. And I said, I'm going to go do ayahuasca because I've never done it. I'm almost 30 and I want to do it. And I don't want to just go to a ceremony. I want to take a pilgrimage. I want to do a pilgrimage. It's funny because the reason I bought this, I'm not going to pick it up because there's cords everywhere, but the reason I bought this little Zoom pod track is because on my pilgrimage, I wanted to take it, and I did. I ended up mailing it back because I didn't use it. But I wanted to have a mobile podcast. I wanted to, the people who pick me up, the people who let me stay on their couch, I wanted to podcast with them. The problem is when you're traveling like that, you are done at the end of the day. You are ready for bed after I had a heavy backpack. It was too heavy. One of my mistakes. I'm a big, strong boy. But man, they aren't kidding when they say every ounce counts. And I know I've heard stories of people, taking their toothbrush and cutting off the handle just to where they have enough handle, just so they don't have to carry around the full-size toothbrush in their backpack to save that minute amount of weight. And I get it now. I had a pocket mirror so I could shave. I had a electric razor so I didn't go full-blown gross homeless dude, even though I think the longest I went without a shower was 2 weeks. It was 14 days, no shower. So I definitely hit homeless, gross dude point on my journey. But yeah, so I planned out, I don't know, maybe a month of planning. I bought the things I thought I needed off Amazon, and went for it. I only told 2 people that I was going to do this. My brother and his wife. So 2 people out of everybody that I know knew that I had this plan to walk to Colorado. Hello, listener. It's Casye. So the next segment here, I decided to cut, going into more detail about the pilgrimage. There is a 6-hour Sci-Fi and Friends podcast that gives much more detail if you want to know more about that. On a need-to-know basis for this podcast, everything went well. I've met a lot of great people. I drank the ayahuasca, did the ceremony. It was great. And I kind of touch on it later into this podcast. And here is where I pick back up after returning from the pilgrimage. I kind of wanted to live a regular life. And so I got a job welding, and it was a good job. But I worked a lot, and I wasn't like getting to pursue the things that I wanted to pursue. So I ended up quitting. That was early 23. And then I got together with a good buddy of mine, and we started a lawn care landscape company. And that actually did pretty well through our first year. We started in May or June of last year, and that's done really well. This winter has been pretty rough. I have no money, but I still want to do this podcast. So I'm going to sacrifice some things in my life so I can pursue something I want to do. And I don't know, to put direct correlations on how ayahuasca has affected me is really difficult. It was definitely a net positive. I'm so much more focused. I can understand things a lot better. I can understand people so much better. I have so much more empathy for people. And that goes to my deep love of humans. It goes to that, So I'm just so fortunate that things went well on that and that it turned out the way that it did. And I just wouldn't change it for the world. So, man, this has already been a long podcast. I hope it's been entertaining. That kind of leads you up to where I am now. The things I didn't hit on. Religion, I use the term creator. I think there is a creator. Is it the Christian God? I don't know. I don't know much about Buddhism, but is it like Buddha or whatever? I don't know. I don't know whose religion is right. I don't like the cop out of I think they all have something to offer. I get it, but I think there's a right answer. But that goes to careful what questions you ask, because deep questions will lead to more questions. And so I've just been able to accept a lot more things, been able to accept you just don't get to know. And that's the point of life, is not to know. To me, this is all opinion. I don't think the point of life is to know. I think life is what you make it. And you can make it so many things. You can make it a really miserable experience if you'd like. And that is not my goal. I don't want to do that. I want a good, joyful experience that I can look back on when I'm an old man, if I make it that far, and really appreciate everything I went through. The wind is really blowing now. So I think there's a creator. I do give thanks. I pray. I have faith. I give appreciation for the things that I have. I give appreciation on the bad days, you know. I think there's something bigger than humans, whatever that might be. I hope this wind isn't too bad. Anything else? I've worked a ton of jobs through my 20s. I guess I didn't really hit on a lot of that. I've worked over 30 jobs. My first official job was a Walmart cart pusher. My last job, I was a welder. Anything in between, I went to Alaska and worked on a fishing boat. Whole other story. I climbed and inspected water tanks in Texas. Did that for a little while. I was a waiter. I was a valet driver. I was a apartment complex maintenance guy. I have a master resume, is what I call it, of just everything that I've done, and it's a couple pages long. It sure allowed me to meet a whole lot of people, and it gave me a lot of experiences that, like, I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. I can do a lot of things because I've done a lot of things, and I'm confident in doing more things because I've done a lot of things. I've done things that I was unqualified for and things I was qualified for. I was a general manager of a brewery. Like, there was no part of me that had any qualification for such a role. Of course, that's a whole other story. So, in closing, I've realized through the years that, you know, people say, like, shine your light or whatever, let your light shine. I've realized that I am a mirror. I'm sure I have a light or whatever, but I'm a mirror and I'm a reflection. And I'm like if you're in a Pokemon, maybe I'm like a Ditto. I am an Animorph. If you read those books as a child like I did, it's like I can morph into things and be comfortable in that skin. And that's why I really feel like I can talk to anybody. That's why I'm really excited to see where this podcast can go, because I just want to meet people. I want to talk to people. I swear I can talk to anybody about anything. I can do it. Like, yeah, I have the capability. I don't know where it's from. I don't know why. I'm kind of a firm believer that if you grew up in somebody else's household, in somebody else's shoes, you're probably going to be almost that identical person. So, like, how can anybody help who they are? You know, and I know there's, like, conscious effort you can put forth to become the person you want to be, and that's certainly where I am now. I'm not who I want to be, but that's my goal. You know, my goal is to be the person I envision myself to be. So every day I wake up and ask myself, how do I become a better version of myself? How do I become the version of myself that I want to be? So I guess there is, you know, behavior augmentation possibilities in that sense. Stuff's getting knocked over because of this wind. I've probably dragged this on long enough. I can't thank any of you enough, truly. I got some really good feedback from the first podcast, and it's like things just aren't the way that you envision them to be most of the time. And so far, podcast 1 and 2 have not gone the way I envisioned. But here, I hit record, and we're here. And this is going to be posted for you to take time out of your day, even if you're driving trucks, looking at you slow motion, even if you're, you know, at home cooking dinner, if you're at the gym working out, if you're at whatever work you're at. I mow grass. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Wherever you are, for you to hit play after I hit record, like, I think that is the coolest thing ever. And I you know, as like entertaining as I want to be, I just want to be authentic. And if you're not into that, hey, there ain't nothing wrong with that. I know you can't be everybody's cup of tea. 100%, I want the focus to be on the guest. And I want you to click on my podcast because you're interested in the guest, because you're interested to know answers to the questions that I ask. So here's mine. Now you know a little bit more about me. Obviously, people's lives are a lot more complex than an hour and a half or whatever this podcast ends up on. And I don't want to go into everything. Maybe there'll be another solo down the road where I can plan for it a little better. Like I said, I was supposed to have a guest this week. Didn't work out. This was, I don't know, a day or two in the making. And I really wanted to do some serious prep work on it. And I did what I could. So here's to consistency. Here's to hitting record. I hope all of you are having the best day. They can't all be the best. So if you don't want today to be your best day, then I understand that too. Hopefully it's a good one though. Nothing wrong with having a good day. You don't have to have your best day today, but a good one still counts. You have more good days than bad through your life. That's a good life. So hopefully today's a good day for you. Thank you again for listening, for reaching out, for giving me feedback. So we'll be back next Monday with a guest I'm really, really excited about. He was on my top 3 opening guests that I really wanted. He was psyched to say yes. So stay tuned for that. You can always message me. I'm on Facebook. I am on X. I'm on the TikTok. I'm on Snapchat, first and last name. Would love to hear from you. I'm not saying this one was gold by any means. I'm freezing out here. My fire's going out. I appreciate all of you. If you want to be on the podcast, please let me know. I'm booked for the next 2 weeks, I think. But that's good. I love looking forward to it. I can prep for you better. If I have a few weeks heads up, I can start formulating questions. What am I curious about your life? And so I would love to, if you got a story to tell, I think that's kind of the main thing. If you have a story to tell, I would love to hear it. So have a great day. Be the best you can be. And you're awesome. You are awesome.